Good morning, everyone. My name is Lee Allen, and I am your 2023 Canopy Realtor Association past president. And we're really excited to have you here with us this morning as we wrap up this year with a realtor hot topic that I know I find incredibly informative, with information we know that's an integral part of the real estate transaction, and that is appraisals. Our panel today represents a wealth of experience and knowledge, and it's going to be led by our very own Peter Gallo. Now, before we get started, we have some upcoming events. Make your holiday shopping easy this year. Visit the Canopy Housing Foundation's virtual holiday auction online at bidforcanopy.com. You can find the perfect gift for friends, family, and I know, like me, maybe yourself. So treat yourself. Do it at bidforcanopy.com, and the auction will remain open through December the 8th. Now it's that time again. The 2023 holiday luncheon is Friday, December the 8th. It'll be at the Sonesta Hotel from 10:30 until 1:30. Seats are limited and registration is open right now at canopyrealtors.com. Now let's meet our all-star panel. Today's moderator, as I already mentioned, is Peter Gallo. Peter is the owner and chief appraiser of Homesite Appraisals in Charlotte. He's been a successful residential real estate appraiser for over 30 years. He started when he was 10. Now, he serves as 2023 chair of the National Association of Realtors Real Property Valuation Committee. He's the 2023 past chair of the North Carolina Realtors Appraisal Section. He is Region 8 North Carolina Realtors Director. He is chair of the Canopy Realtor Association Government Affairs Committee, and he is currently a 2023 Canopy Realtor MLS Director. Peter is also the co-founder and past president of the North Carolina Real Estate Appraiser Association and serves as the director of the Charlotte Regional Mortgage Lenders Association. Peter, that's a lot of stuff, Peter. That's a lot of stuff. Thanks for being here today. Dave Costner was first licensed in 1983 as a real estate salesman. He worked in sales for 1 year before deciding that appraising was actually his calling, and he went out on his own in 1985 and became a certified residential appraiser in 1991. He has been involved in several professional organizations throughout the years, including realtor appraisal sections for both North Carolina Realtors and the National Association of Realtors. He is currently a member of the Gaston Association of Realtors, where he was named Realtor of the Year in 2021 and served on the board of directors. Thank you so much, Dave, for being here. Holly Ray is the owner of Ray Appraisals LLC in Asheville. A Western North Carolina native, Holly grew up in a family building supply business, which shaped her path toward the real estate industry. She earned her bachelor's in business administration and finance with an emphasis in real estate. Holly currently serves on the advisory group for the Canopy Multiple Listing Service and has previously served as president of Asheville's North Carolina Real Estate Appraiser Association. Thank you so much, Holly, for being here. And finally, William Bryant. William is the owner of an appraiser for W.T. Bryant Appraisals LLC. He's been appraising residential properties for over 16 years. He is a seasoned real estate investor and property manager. In addition to appraisals with banks, William offers pre-listing appraisal and measurements. So thank you, William. Thank you all for being here. Now, on our registration page, we asked our attendees to submit questions for our panel, and we received a lot of responses. Responses are already coming in the Q&A. So that is actually available for you. You won't find the chat available, but you will find the Q&A, and we will do the best we can to get to some of those questions as well. Not all questions, unfortunately, will be able to be answered during this program, and I encourage you to reach out to your local appraiser for more information and clarification if we don't have time to get to your specific question. And also, for the sake of time, we will not address questions or issues specific to a particular situation or transaction, just to be fair to all parties. Lastly, this hot topic is being recorded. It will be on our website in the next few weeks. And I personally, as a broker, would suggest going back and reviewing this and maybe using it even for a sales meeting, as there'll be some great content here. Peter, it's all yours. We're ready to go.
All right.
Thank you,
Hey,
Peter.
everybody. Thank you, Lee. Hey, everybody. So like Lee said, we had a ton of questions come in on registration, and we're getting more questions now. And that's what this is about. Ask the appraiser, right? So um, one of the more recent questions we had was how to best prepare our CMAs for our clients, using what guidelines. So what you're going to learn here today, or what we're going to talk about, everything we talk about is going to help you with your CMAs. It's also going to help with your coming up with contracts and offers, and just dealing with appraisers in general and appraisals. One thing I wanted to make clear, and maybe we can all talk about to start with, just to frame the discussion, is appraisers are not advocates. We are unbiased third parties that are giving objective opinions, and that's what we're giving our opinion, but they're supported opinions. So sometimes you hear it's an art and a science, and that's kind of what we do. We have opinions, but they're supported and defendable. So maybe we can go around and kind of talk about that. Dave, what would you say about that to help our attendees and our fellow realtors understand about an appraiser not being an advocate?
Yeah, we're required to be independent, impartial, and objective. We're not advocates. We're not even advocates for the property or our report. So, whoever orders the appraisal report, and for all practical purposes today, we're talking about for real estate mortgage loans. You may need an appraiser at one time if you've sold a house for cash, and your buyer wants to get an appraiser, just make sure that they're paying the right amount. But yeah, that's part of what you get paid for. You get paid for an objective opinion. It completely would skew the process if if there was any kind of advocacy going on, and the appraisal industry wouldn't survive that. So when you're doing your CMAs, what I would say is that you're going to need to look at your CMA the same way that the appraiser is going to do when he gives his opinion of value. It would be silly for you to, if you were in a subdivision, say, where there are plenty of sales, and some of the newer subdivisions where there may be just 10 or 12 floor plans being built. It would be silly of you to go outside of the subdivision, because we're not going to do it. Not if we have sales within the subdivision, good recent sales. So it's important for you to not blue sky your client and just come up with a number to appease them or to get the listing. It's best to get yourself in the mind of an appraiser, and you can do that by looking at appraisals as they come in. I've often suggested that you as a buyer's agent have a good number of potential appraisals you could have put in a file, and get them from your buyers, and you can look and see. Every appraiser does it different. Appraisers are almost like chefs, like in a chili cook-off. All the chili tastes good, and it tastes like chili at the end, but we all sprinkle in our different ingredients. Every appraisal is done somewhat differently, but you can count on at the end that you will have an unbiased, fair opinion of value being formulated that is shown on the second page of your appraisal, how the formulation was come up with. But at any rate, if you can look and see what the appraisers typically do, you can tailor your work on your CMA to be very similar, and you can give your seller a better work product.
So thanks, Dave. So William, we are not advocates. We base our opinions on data, on the data we see. So what's kind of your answer to the same question, or kind of just the same theme, that we're not advocates? We base our opinions on data.
Okay, good morning. I want to start with a phrase that I always use is, I don't have any skin in the game. So therefore, I'm gonna give you my honest opinion, and it's going to be unbiased. So what I would like to do, if there's help that's given to me from any kind of agent, be honest with me, don't insult me. So yes, we're going to start in the neighborhood, and if we can, and there are some exceptions to that. And what I mean by that is there are cases where somebody comes in and totally renovates a property, and there are more renovated comps in the area or in the neighborhood. So therefore, you got to search out a little bit further than usual to make things, to find out what the true value may be or what you assume the true value may be. But being an advocate, no, we're not. We're just trying to get the correct value on the property and be as unbiased as possible.
So Holly, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I think we always get, hey, you came in low, you came in high. Well, we don't get the you came in high too much, but hey, we came in where we feel is accurate and is supported. It's not a matter of low or high, right? Because that's not what we do.
That's right. Good morning. I will just say all of you said exactly the correct thing. We are not advocates as appraisers, and that is a hard factor because as sales agents, you are advocates for your clients, and we're there to be the unbiased, unobjective opinion of value. And that's the hardest part between us and you as the sales agent, because we're just there to provide the value for everyone. And we're looking at the best comps we can. And when we're searching, we might, like they said, stay in the neighborhood, but you also might have to go outside too. But you just want to make sure that you're keeping with your location, because location is key.
Thanks, Holly. Yeah, so another common question that we get is, can you guys all just share your screens with your list of adjustments that you have for items? Oh, we don't have that, right? So Holly, maybe try and explain the concept behind adjustments. I mean, we're comparing and contrasting, we're trying to isolate factors, maybe just kind of give a background on paired sales analysis or paired sales, and just the concept behind adjustments.
Yes, that mythical list of adjustments that we all would love to have floating around is it's just not feasible, because every market is different. And even within my Asheville market, there's so many different markets. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to use the same adjustment for every appraisal that I'm doing. And that's all market derived. So we're looking into the market. And just like what Peter said, we're doing paired sales analysis. So we're comparing as like properties as possible to determine what that adjustment is. Maybe there is an adjustment for an all brick house versus a vinyl sided house. Maybe there's not. It's all based on that market and all based on the overall quality and condition of the house. Not always just that one specific factor.
Right.
And I'm sure one of you can add more to that.
Right. So you could have a property that, say, I was doing a townhouse recently, and it had a view of a hillside woods. And I was looking in for comparables, and I had other developments, other townhouses that had views that were located near commercial, had a view of power lines. And I was surprised to find that that there really wasn't much of a market reaction as much as I would have thought to view, because, and I interpreted that as, hey, this is a more dense type of housing. Maybe the views aren't as important. And so I was looking at the market and the data and telling a story. But William, so compare and contrast, you're trying to find that those two same houses, they sold a little bit differently, and the only reason might have been one had a fireplace and they got maybe a little bit more, right? That's kind of the concept. But how would you explain it, or how do you approach adjustments?
Okay, so adjustment for me, I start out with the market reaction, and then we have to figure out what the location is. For instance, um, pools these days could come in sometimes between 70 and 200,000. A pool in a $400,000 or $500,000 neighborhood that you're paying $100,000 for is going to bring you probably less value than a pool in a neighborhood that's probably $1 million plus. So those are the things that are the factors we have to take into consideration when we're doing adjustments. Adjustments are kind of critical to the actual location and the property. So like a fireplace, something like that, when you're trying to decide whether the fireplace made a different type of appreciation or a contribution to the property as opposed to one that doesn't. It does get a little tricky, and when you find out what that is, and you can find out the value, but there are other factors too when it comes to condition, and you have to relate all those things to the appraisal. So again, when you're doing adjustments, you have to relate to all properties in the area to try to find out what certain items are contributing to these properties.
Okay, thank you, William. Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say this, that, this is one of the great instances of the answer, well, it depends, applies to this, because it really does. Holly pointed out, there can be no difference in value between vinyl sided homes and maybe a 3/4 vinyl home with a brick front. There may not be. It's possible. I've done recently an appraisal in a golf community, and I went out. The listing said beautiful, lot on the golf course, and it was a beautiful lot on the golf course. But the topography was such in the backyard that the slope went up from the yard to the point where you couldn't see the golf course. It was still on the golf course, but do you have the value then of a golf course lot if you don't have a view? So we have to take all these things into consideration. And it could be, as William said, that there may be more than one thing that has to be extracted before we get to the value of the item that we're looking for. So best practice is find the most similar homes you can find. The less adjustments that you have to make, the better off you're going to be statistically, because statistically, with very few adjustments, you're going to have pretty reasonably similar comparable sales. And yeah, you may have to go outside the neighborhood. William said it's very possible that if you had a fully remodeled home, you may have nothing in the neighborhood. You may have to go, a 1/4 of a mile away to find something similar to that. And that's okay. Because a lot of times it's a lot easier to find that remodeled property there than to find the unremodeled property next door and then try to figure a big subjective adjustment for the difference in quality that's been done during the remodel.
Right, and that's kind of what we're kind of leaning into the comp selection discussion, because really adjustments are just fine tuning, right? The foundation of a good appraisal is the comparable selection, and that's when we talk about CMAs and just disputing appraisals, or you really have to look at what the appraiser, what sales the appraiser used as comparable sales, and are they truly the best? And that's really what we're tasked with originally. And we all kind of do that. We probably do it in the same way, but a little bit differently, maybe. But really, so William, how do you approach sales? Because we get that question, hey, this house is nothing like anything else in the market. There are no comparables. Well, there's always something. And so how do you just generally approach selection of comparables? And why don't you, when we can go around and just talk about how we start, maybe how every one of us starts with that search.
So for me, I like to start with the location. For the most part, you want to stay in the neighborhood. And then for me, it's all about bracketing, because I kind of understand what lenders or people are looking for. They want to see how you come to certain items of adjustments, or how you come to your value by using different types of properties in the neighborhood. So I'm gonna try to find one that has a higher heated square foot one that has a lower, try to find out the ones that have similar garages and just similar items completely. Now, when that doesn't happen, then we have to travel a little bit. So my comp selection is trying to find those properties that are so similar to the property where my adjustments are minimal. And that's very important to where you have minimal adjustments, because when you start to go over these ranges of 15 and 25% of these adjustments, then lenders start to want to kick them back to you, and that just takes more time. So you want to do it right the first time. So that way you try to find more similar properties to what you're appraising. That way you can keep it simple.
Okay. And so Holly, how do you do it? And also maybe like, where would you go if location, you want to go somewhere competing, right? And how do you figure that out?
Yes, I do want to just add that one of the biggest things that we're looking for is what a buyer would look at. So what would that same buyer look for? And would they look in this county and the county beside it, or are they only looking in specific neighborhoods? And oftentimes that does change with markets. You know, over the past few years, we've had a shortage of houses being listed. So buyers are willing to look further out than they have been in past years. So that also plays a factor in things, especially making those adjustments, because maybe that buyer doesn't value the view as much as they did 5 years ago. So that is all very market specific and time specific, meaning what is going on in today's market. Yes.
Oh yeah. So that's a great point. You know, we're trying to go into the mindset of a typical purchaser in a market. It isn't the one that's going to pay the most or the least. It's the typical purchaser. Dave, how do you kind of approach your comparable selection when you're doing it?
I do like William. I first start with the area. I'll drop a GPS marker on my subject address, and I'll start drawing quarter-of-a-mile concentric rings and look for similar sales. And I've tried to also, as Holly said, find recent similar sales. So it's sometimes hard to extract the difference in the market. Of course, on CMLS, we're fortunate enough to have the statistical analysis module, which, sorry about that, which, will help us extract, market condition adjustments if we have to go way back in time, and if they're warranted to. So, but I do that. I look close first. One of the main things I think our lenders are looking for is physical similarities. So I would find it, if I had a split level as a subject, I would most likely look for similar split levels, or maybe a ranch with a basement, to try to be as similar as I can to the subject. Because even though the functional utility may be the same, they may both have 4 bedrooms, the ranch and the split level. The market does look at basements somewhat differently. So I try to make the physical similarity as close as possible. And then, of course, one of the most important things is condition. So, and that's condition is the one thing that will make me leave the neighborhood if I can't find anything close by, because it's very hard to extract condition, in remodeling, from an area if you don't have enough sales of similar stature. So it's sometimes warranted to go, quarter of a mile, half a mile, even a mile away, to find something very similar.
Okay. And I think there's a misconception out there because of the GSE's requirements, or they used to require within a mile in urban areas, within, I think, 5 miles in suburban areas, and, within 10 or 10 plus for rural areas. But those are just GSE guidelines. We go where a typical purchaser would go. And that could be in some rural areas, it could be 20 miles away, it could be different. And then with commercial appraisals, if it's a golf course, it might be in a different state. I mean, you're trying to support your value, and you're doing whatever you need. Go ahead, Dave.
I just want to say, Yeah, when you're hearing from me, I'm talking about a quarter of a mile, and it sounds like just a different, part of the country. For me, the type of work I do, that's the way it works. If you're in rural counties, you're going to have to do what Pete just said. So yeah, when I say that I have to go a quarter of a mile away and that's a long distance, that's only because I'm doing, subdivision work in Charlotte.
Right. And when I talk about GSEs, I'm talking about government sponsored enterprises, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which pretty much if you're doing an appraisal for a residential mortgage, you'll have to write the appraisal according to their requirements and guidelines. So moving on, I had a something queued up and I'm trying to get my thoughts back together on it. Oh, basements. Oh, go ahead, Holly. Go on. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, somebody had a question about, do we only utilize sales within the MLS? And the short answer to that is yes, that's the first place we are looking, because we don't always know every single sale. And I think that is where it's very important. If you as a sales agent know about the house 3 doors down, that's exactly like the house that we're working on doing the appraisal, that's important information to share with us. And we take information just like that. We still have to verify it. And if we can't verify it, then we can't utilize it. But if we have that information, that's the first step in us trying to verify it. So yes, that we can use stuff outside of the MLS, but it's not something that we typically do. We're typically looking at stuff in the MLS.
So you brought up a good point, and let's stick with that. That's another big question, is how to communicate with an appraiser. What can we say? What can't we say? So we're investigators, right? So we don't want to miss anything. And there is nothing wrong with somebody giving us information. It's just, there shouldn't be pressure associated with that, right, Holly?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, you can't coerce us, but you can provide us information. And information is golden. That's what we want. Yes, we are definitely trying to be the investigator on the case and have our magnifying glass and see exactly what we can see. So with that information, if you have information to provide us, feel free to provide us with that, either at the appointment or send us an email with that information. You're just giving us information. Information can be a survey, the tax card, the deeds, any kind of relevant comps that you think are relevant, and maybe tell us why you think they're relevant. And that would be a reason for us to look at those a little bit more.
Okay. I mean, Dave, any thoughts on communicating with appraisers and what agents and brokers should be comfortable with or not comfortable with?
Sure. I just actually posted a link in the chat that Vic Knight wrote. I was actually in one of these seminars with Vic and Pete last year for North Carolina Realtors. Vic wrote an extensive article on what you can and can't do as far as communications with the appraiser. So take a look at that. He wrote it on behalf of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, which he sat on a few years back. We live and die by data, just like Holly said. You want to give us data, we're not going to turn it down. We'll take the data. You may have information that we don't have that we would love to have. Additionally, if you've got sales that you think might be the right sales, give them to us. We'll look at them and make the determination as to what the proper comparable sales will be. But if you've got something you want to suggest, sure, put it in your appraisal package. I would suggest that every agent, leave a package for the appraiser when they go out there, maybe including a survey, a tax card, stuff that we'll already have, but we'll take the data. We don't mind the data. Here's where we will not talk to you. We will not talk to you about specifics of the appraisal. We won't talk to you about values, we are held to the same confidentiality requirements that attorneys are. So there's certain aspects of the report that are confidential in nature, and we're only allowed to discuss those with our client, which is typically the lender or the AMC. So it's best to do this prior to us completing the report. But there's nothing to keep us from talking after the report's completed, but don't expect us to discuss values or confidential information with you at that point.
Thanks, Dave. And William, so let's go into that a little bit more. So first, what's your take on, what is allowed to happen to communicate with agents and brokers, but then how does it change maybe after the report's written? And if somebody has a copy of the appraisal, what happens then, and what's kind of the course of action if somebody has an issue with the report? And just so you know, you're on mute.
Thanks. I want to first start off by saying, yeah, I'm all in on agents giving me information. As much information I have is key. Sometimes there are things that I don't see all the time. I'm not perfect. So comparables that are good. And then sometimes we pull comparables off the MLS, although we think they're good comparables. An agent may know more specifically about an appraisal that might not make it good for the subject that we're trying to compare it to. So we try to take everything into consideration. So going through the process, Peter, we do what we can to come up with the value. But after, even during, we can't discuss values. And once we submit the report goes to our client. And once it goes to our client, the report is owned by the client. The lender does have say-so in it also, but the client is the one that actually owns the appraisal. So as an appraiser, I can't legally send you the report, nor can I legally talk to you about the report, other than little specifics as the report has been submitted and things of that nature. So it really is a line between once we submit that report and what we're able to do as far as communication, because at the end of the day, the client owns the report, and we can't legally do certain things when it comes to submitting the report or releasing that report to other parties.
Right. Holly, did you want to chime in on that? The second half, after the report's been submitted and you get that call from somebody who might have a copy and they want to talk to you about it.
Yeah, just what William said, our client is the person who engages us. And most typically, our client is the lender, especially in a mortgage transaction. And even though you have a copy of the appraisal, we are bound to only discuss those with our client. Even if you're the borrower, we can't discuss it with you unless we get permission from our client. And in most cases is that lender. Sometimes they will give us permission, but we still have to get that permission. And we can talk general questions with you, but we cannot talk specific questions about that appraisal and the specific value. Those items are confidential items. And somebody had a question about what is an appraisal package and what would it look like? And it would just look like exactly what William said. Like, we want all the information. You're the sales agent. Chances are you've been in that house longer than us, more times than us. We're coming for a short period of time and we get a very short snapshot of the house. We're trying to see everything we can, and we may miss something. And if we do, that's where we want you to give us that information. And all that information can just include anything pertinent about the house, tax cards, surveys. I think I've already said that, but and just CMAs if you've done a CMA. It's all important information.
So when we're talking about confidentiality, and Dave said something like it's similar to an attorney's, this is, I just reached for my USPAP book, and this is what appraisers are bound to and our we answer to the licensing board. They enforce all the rules in here, and part of that is client confidentiality, where once we hand that report in, we can only speak to the client about results in that report. So any opinions, anything related to value, how we came up with the value, has to remain, discussions about that have to remain between us and the client. We can answer general appraisal questions like we are now. We're talking very general, high level on appraisal issues. But once we tag a specific address or a specific property to a value, that's an appraisal, or can be considered an appraisal. And then we are bound and restricted by our rules and requirements, and we have to have a work file. We have to, everything we do is very regimented to back up what we say, right? In all our courses, like the first pre-licensing course we've taken, right? We're told if we're at a barbecue and we're talking about somebody's at, hey, so what do you think my house is worth? And we say, oh, we think it's this, that's an appraisal. And we have to have a work file. We have to, all of a sudden we're in this realm. And we have to be careful to back up and support whatever we're saying with data, and can't be biased, all of that. Any more thoughts on that topic?
I'll just expand and say that USPAP stands for Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Just so everybody knows, USPAP isn't some mythical, weird document that we look at.
Yeah. And that's what this is. Dave?
Well, I just think it might be a good place to segue into ROD requests, since we're talking about communications, with the brokers.
So reconsideration of values. So you brought it up, you go for it.
All right. So yeah, every now and then, you think these guys are out of their minds. He put this on here and I know this house is worth this. And I've got the data for this. Well, you can't call me. You need to address the lender. If you got information, if you think we missed a sale, or if you think we screwed up on measuring the house, or whatever your beef may be, we are not going to talk to you about that, because the lender will have in place certain guidelines that they have, and every lender is a little bit different on how to handle revision requests. So typically what you'll do, you'll contact the lender at that point, and that'll be the buyer's lender. Even if you're the selling agent, I guess you'll do this through the buyer's agent. I guess I really don't know. But regardless, that lender will have a procedure that you have to follow through to submit your request. And the ones I've seen often have a standardized sheet, and it'll ask why you think that the value is incorrect. And they'll ask you for factual data, were there physical items that he missed? Did he miss the pool? Did he miss whatever? Or did he miss sales that you think were better than the sales used in the report as comparable sales? And that's typically what you see. I've yet to ever have one where they've said that my factual information was incorrect. It's always the comparable sales they thought were better. So the agent will give those to the lender. Then the lender in turn submits that to us, and we have a specified amount of time, it's generally a few days, to answer it. And we will answer it in the report. If you look, if you have access to the report, you'll probably find it on the addendum page. And we'll say why we agree, why we disagree. And if we agree and it changes the value, then you'll see a whole lot of writing on that. And you'll see some explanation as to, why we did in fact revise the value on that. So I don't know, maybe some of these, maybe the other two guys or girls can, have a different way of looking at it, or if they handle it different in their areas. But that's essentially how it's done here.
So, but William, so we're when we come to reconsideration of value, it's not that, even though we can't discuss report results with anybody other than the client. It doesn't mean that we're not accountable, but all of those questions need to go through the lender at that point because it's about the report that we submitted, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And so there are a lot of items that, just like Dave said, we're not perfect, so we might miss something. And first of all, if you're going to do a reconsideration of value, it's got to be about some things that could be factual or factual that we miss. And there are also some things where you can challenge us on part of being subjective, such as we didn't give one property was renovated and the other one was just updated 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago. So if you think that that may require or an adjustment or something like that, then that's something that you can include in your reconsideration of value. There are a lot of factors that go into coming up with a value. So if you think that our value is wrong, all the information that you can give us to reevaluate or reconsider the value is very helpful.
Holly, go ahead. You want to pile on?
Yeah, I will just add to say this is where it's very important. If you have that information up front, go ahead and give it to us because it's going to make the process a lot smoother if you have data that you think we need to know and you can talk to us about it beforehand. Once again, we can't be coerced, and you can't, and you're not trying to we are I'm losing my words there. We are there to be objective, and we don't want you to coerce us, but we do want that data. So if it helps us in the front, that's just going to help your client, and it's going to save that ROV at the end and save that headache for everyone if you can provide us that data in the front.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we got that. Boy, there's so many questions that we're getting, and a lot of them are very specific. So it's going to be hard for us to go into specifics and answer each and every question. So we're trying to keep it, like I said, at the 30,000 foot level to try and encompass all these more specific questions into kind of the general conversation. But one thing that was brought up over and over again, and we need to keep it general, but generally, William, basements. Okay, so first of all, let's explain what a basement is, how we measure, maybe ANSI, go into that a little, and then how do we value them? It's not that we don't give them value, it's just we might categorize it differently. But and I know Holly wants to go into kind of reporting this in the MLS because there's a lot of issues with different levels. But let's start, William. Can you kind of explain just generally when we break out a basement and what is a basement, and then what kind of how we approach value? There's still value there, but it might be just in a different place on a form, depending if we're doing a narrative, but mostly for mortgage lending, there's certain requirements, right?
Exactly. So I think sometimes we get confused with what the below grade is. So a basement or anything that's low grade is anything that's below grade, which is below street level. That's what that means. So on the second page of the report, you'll see a line where it says above grade. And that's where your heated square foot goes for anything that's above grade, and that's above street level. Sometimes we mix certain things in like split levels and things like that because sometimes split levels are kind of iffy when it comes to whether that lower side is with street level or it's below, because that whole thing is daylight. So therefore we kind of take that all in consideration. But when it comes to basements, we have to study the market trends and see what they're doing in certain areas. There was a time ago where basements weren't, bringing that much value in our area, and that's just because of the market and the way it was. During COVID, some people were getting dollar for dollar for these things. But now we're kind of trickling back to a way to where it's kind of coming down again. But typically, basements can go anywhere from, it just depends on what the basement has in it. So, some basements are just basements that have space level, that have fireplace or family rooms, baths, and stuff like that. And then you get more complicated when you have a basement that has a kitchen. So if the basement has a kitchen, you have to make sure that you're comparing it to basements that have at least one that has a kitchen, because a kitchen is going to bring you more value. It's going to contribute more value to the property, because that's like an accessory unit, pretty much. So that's where somebody else can live. You can rent it out and all those type of things. So you have to take all that into consideration. But again, basements bring, for me, it depends on if it's finished. Finished, a lot of times is like 10% of what I adjusted for the heated area, and this might be confusing. And then, it's like 10 to 25%. It just depends on where it is of unfinished. And then after that, it's like 35 for me, sometimes 25 to 60% of the of a heated square foot of a basement as compared to what I adjusted for the above level. I know that may be confusing, but when we go to adjust for a heated area, we have to consider what we're going to adjust for the basement. So therefore, the basement level is going to be a percentage of what the above grade level is worth.
Well, so Dave, we're trying to compare apples to apples right here. We're not going to have a one story with a basement and maybe it's a 1,500 square foot above grade, 1,500 square foot below grade, and then compare it to a 3,000 square foot 2-story that has no basement, right?
We don't want to, we don't want to do that.
Right.
There are times when we will have no choice. And what sticks out to me the most is like lakefront properties. And a lot of times just because of the grade on lakefront properties, you're going to often have a big walkout basement. And William said there's going to be different variations in the fit and finish of these basement areas. Some of them are just identical. They use the exact same finishes as they would on the upper level. Some of them have very minimal finishes, as you have probably seen. You've seen the basements with paneling and Luan doors, and vinyl sheet goods on the floor. Then you've seen the basements that are identical in nature to the quality upstairs. So those are times where you may not have a choice but to do what Pete said and do a 15-15 compared to a 3. But best practice is to try to find the most similar sales. That way you don't have to make these large sweeping adjustments, because that's really where it's hard to extract the data when you're doing it on such a big scale. It can be done, and we have to do it a lot of times. But the more similar a property that you compare your subject to, the least adjustments or the less adjustments, I should say, and probably the more accurate you're going to get of an indication once that's adjusted.
Right. And just kind of going back to the adjustment thing, a lot of times it might not all be spelled out in the report what the appraiser did. We'll have it in our work file and might refer to it in the report, but there's a lot that goes into adjustments that might not all be spelled out word for word in the appraisal. But Holly, let's talk about, especially where you are in Asheville with mountain properties, there's so many different types of designs that incorporate multiple levels and different types of functionality where a kitchen is and that. So you probably run into this a little more than most of us in the mountains. What are you seeing? Kind of what do you want to express to the attendees here about basements and just about functional and how you value all of that?
Yeah. So I just want to expand on William's definition of a basement, that it is a true basement is defined as anything where earth is touching it. So Dave said like the lakefront properties, and in my area, we have a lot of mountain properties. So it could be that only the earth is touching one side of that basement level. And here's where it gets confusing, because our MLS system has lower level and basement level. And we can all agree that it sounds better to call it lower level. However, that's not correct. and it's defined as a basement if the earth touches it. And that's period. So we can't be misleading by calling it lower level and identifying it in lower level. And I think one of the largest misused fields within the MLS currently is that lower level category. And so you want to make sure that you're inputting your data into the MLS correctly. So then it makes it easier for us to extract those kind of adjustments and for you to find those lot property homes. Because if you're trying to find a basement, you want to make sure that you're able to find something. So just making sure that I'm saying that correctly. Lower level is a property that is all above grade. It's all above grade. But so it can be identified as that. And then a basement is something where earth is touching it. And just because it's classified as a basement does not mean it gets devalued. There could be the same value as the above grade, and there could be a lower value. It all just depends on the quality, condition, and the market.
So I think William was referring to the heated area, and I saw in the question heated area. Let's talk about gross living area. What do we consider gross living area that's gonna, so if we're saying it's a 2,000 square foot 2-story, when we say it's 2,000 square feet, but then it has an in-law or an accessory dwelling unit, how do we break that out? Holly, I'm just going to go back to you. Let's talk about when we're measuring what we consider square footage versus not. And maybe also if you want to talk about, no, let's keep it to that.
Okay. Gross living area is defined as heated, finished living area that is contiguous. Contiguous means you cannot be in a finished space, go into a unfinished space, and back into a finished space. It has to go finished, finished, finished. And when we're saying finished space, the finished spaces are finished floors, finished walls, and finished ceilings. It also has to be heated. And one of the biggest things as agents that you can look at is the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has a yellow book. And look at that. Use that yellow book to your benefit and look at that to make sure that you're following those guidelines.
And you guys, if you want to chime in too, but also one of the things Holly said too, started talking about data. I mean, everything that appraisers do and what we're interested in is consistency, uniformity. We need that in our data. We need things to be reported consistently. So if there's, like what Holly was saying, if somebody's reporting a basement when it's really a lower level, or a lower level when it's really a basement, that confuses the data, confuses us into misreading what the market is doing. So Dave and William, you want to add to that at all? Dave, go ahead. Or William's leaning in, go ahead.
I can chime in on when she was talking about the contiguous, as far as the GLA and stuff like that. I wanted to add that sometimes we have these accessory units where, there are different types, but anytime it stops, there's a door and it goes into like an apartment area or just an area like an in-law suite or something like that. We have to separate that in most cases and value it differently because of what it is. And once we do that, the lender is wanting to see how we come up with that. And we have to use another property that has the similar thing to it. So if your property has an in-law suite where we call it an accessory unit, then more than likely we have to find at least one property that has an accessory unit where we can compare it to. And most likely in those cases, it's not in the same neighborhood. We have to travel a little bit to get that. Depending on the condition, when it was added when was it part of the construction when the house was built? or was it added later on? So once it's added later on, we have to compare what the quality is of that part of the property to the original part of the property, just to make sure they are make sure they're pretty much comparative, and then go from there. So that's my take on contiguous and having second accessory units.
Okay. Dave, we also had a question about
Now,
sunken family
I want
rooms.
to clear something up too, that's always seems to be a matter of contention and question as far as like basement bedrooms, yeah, or basement or bedrooms anywhere. Because I believe I had a discussion once with a broker, asking me why I call this room a bedroom when MLS rules told him that it was not a bedroom. But it's a bedroom if, let's say basement bedroom, there are requirements. There's no closet requirement. There's a lot of people that believe that there's a requirement for a closet, but there's typically not. Of course, the market expects certain things, and maybe if the market expects a closet, then, maybe we shouldn't be calling it that, even when it is. We could call it a bedroom or a study, possibly, even though it's functional as a bedroom. The bedroom cannot have less than 70 square feet, with the shortest wall being 7 feet. It has to have a primary method of egress and ingress, but it also has to have an emergency method to get out in case there's a fire. So if it's a basement bedroom, it does have to have a door and maybe a window leading to the outside. Also, the window sill can't be, I think 44 inches, can't be any higher than 44 inches from where your feet are on the ground, on the grade level. I guess maybe because it'd be harder to pull yourself up to get out. And there's also some requirements about the size of the window. It can't be so small, or it can't be like a crank window where you couldn't get out the thing. It's got to open up a certain amount. Also, ceilings have to be 7 feet for at least 50% of the ceiling. So that should clear up, for a lot of people what constitutes a bedroom and what does not.
So we're really talking, there's kind of a difference here between guidelines, regulations, how you report things versus what has value or what doesn't have value. It's not, so you have maybe a room that wouldn't qualify as a bedroom, but it's not that there isn't value there. And maybe there's somebody's just using it as a bedroom. There's a bed there, but it's really a dining room. We might report things a certain way, but in general, we're able to explain things like, hey, a wall could easily be put up or a window could easily be installed and be used as a room. The market's reacting to it this way. We're really looking at the overall square footage of the home, and that's what we're comparing to. There isn't really a significance to a 4 versus a 5 bedroom home. There isn't, or there's a diminishing kind of contribution that goes to if you have 4 baths versus 5 baths versus 3 baths versus 2 baths or 2.5. So it's not that basements aren't given value it's just they're reported differently. And we have the opportunity to describe that and explain how the market's reacting to all of it. And that's kind of our, like William was going, we're trying to bracket everything. So we're trying to get comparables that represent maybe a higher level of amenities or higher market appeal versus those with lower, where we're somewhere in between. We know we try and bracket everything, and then we kind of squeeze down on with adjustments to fine tune and get that final opinion. One thing I wanted to answer is, can sunken rooms on main level be considered lower? Where a sunken room, if the exterior walls are above grade, that's where we're determining and measuring according to ANSI as exterior walls. What's going on in the inside is something else. So again, everything has value. If there are open areas that we can't consider on the second floor, that's not living area. It's open areas. It's not counted. We have to pull that out. So I said a few things. Anybody want to add to any of that?
I'll add, somebody asked a question about why some appraisals have 5 comps in comparison to 3 comps. And one of the biggest reasons I would say to that is just what Peter was saying. We're trying to bracket those features, and oftentimes lenders and underwriters are requiring us to bracket those features. So if you've got a property that has 3 bedrooms, they want to see other comps with 3 bedrooms, or vice versa. If you've got a house that has 1 bedroom, and maybe that's only 1 bedroom above grade, but we still have to find a house with 1 bedroom above grade. So we might need more comps to support that value and to bracket those features that they're wanting us to bracket.
And that goes to credibility, right? I mean, there's requirements there for a reason. It's so that somebody who looks at the report isn't just going to see just a bunch of sales on a grid. There's a story, and it makes sense. It leads you to what the appraiser's final opinion is, and you can see that. I think we've all reviewed reports where we look at them, and it's just like, I don't know how they came up with value. And then there's other ones where they, it's easy to understand, and that's the goal. With 7 comps or 3 comps, if I only need 3 comps, because it's very straightforward, and I've considered way more than that. We all do. We consider everything and all kinds of sales, but those are the 3 or the 5 that most tell the story. And the more you add might confuse more, or you need to add more or you might want pendings and listings on there. So which leads to changing markets. We get a lot of questions about changing markets. How do we appraise? We just came out of very rapidly changing, between when COVID happened, and just basically the opposite happened because rates dropped, and all of a sudden everything went through the roof, and we had no inventory, and we're still suffering from that. Dave, how one of the things that we use were time adjustments, right? But how do we change? How do we appraise in a changing market? Pendings, time adjustment, listings. We're not just looking at everything in the past, right?
No, we have to take a holistic view of everything. And it's, as practitioners that look at this every day, it's fairly easy for us to see the overall picture. And for brokers too, because they're out there in the weeds. So they're seeing how the changes occur. They're pulling up a hot sheet every day. So it's even easier for them. For me, on every appraisal I do 2 statistical analyses. I do one that I pulled straight off of CMLS. It's the statistical marketing or statistical analysis SAM module. I don't know what it is, statistical analysis module.
Yeah,
SAM. And also part of the appraisal form is the 1004 MC form, which you extract data from the market based on a 12-month period, the first 6 months of that 12-month period, then the middle 3 months, and then the last 3 months. And you can extract, if you have enough data, you can extract adjustments from the market. So if I see that my extractions are statistically significant as far as the market going up or the market going down, then I can apply that to older sales if I have to use them. We prefer not to use older sales. We'd much rather use newer sales within the last 90 days. And, within 180 days, sometimes we have to go back, 6 to 12 months. In that case, it's up to us. We as practitioners have to make a decision. Am I going to be able to apply an adjustment based on the difference in market then and now, and still come up with results that aren't misleading? Because that's the requirement. You're to present your report, in a manner that's not misleading. I would say that, you can play with statistics. You can play with, and, to a certain degree, just by changing the parameters of your search, change somewhat of the analysis results. If you do it, the way you should do it, then you can either show that the market has changed enough to make an adjustment for it if you have to, or that there's no adjustment warranted. Regardless, on older sales, I would say 6 to 12 months. If you're using them in your report, you need to explain the use in an addendum. That explains it to the lender. It also explains it to the buyer if he's got a copy of it, to the buyer's agent, to see that that just wasn't ignored, but it was looked at and either acted upon or discounted.
So with all that too, I mean, William, it also, a component of this is also competency, right? I mean, and that kind of goes back to this. You need to know what's going on in your market, right? It's not just pendings and listings, it's all that. Plus you're aware, you've worked in the market, not to say you can acquire the competency, but part of that is doing your investigation and becoming competent if you aren't already are. Anything you want to add?
So there was a time, especially like in the COVID times, where there was a rapid increase in property values. So time adjustments were really warranted back then, especially if you couldn't find anything. But now in the market, we're dealing with even lower inventory because of the activities going on because of the higher interest rates. So with that being said, it's becoming more challenging to find what these time adjustments are. And in some areas with the no activity, you have to, it's like I said, it's just really challenging to find out what those things actually are. But time adjustments are very essential. We've seen a somewhat of a small decline. I think it was last year in some areas because of the increase in the interest rates. But then since then, that there have been some areas that have started to appreciate, and we're having to find out what percentage during that time of those transactions where the property has sold more than, because typically lenders want to see an adjustment if it's warranted after when a sale is older than 3 months. So there are some areas that have appreciated, and we have to find out what that percentage adjustment is to add to that report.
Right. And Holly, I mean, listings and pendings are important, and listing histories are important, aren't they? To look at, I mean, like William just said, I mean, it was almost easy to make time adjustment. I mean, it's still, I mean, if you know the formula, you know how to make them, and you know trends and developing trends, and they're all over the place right now, they pocket to pocket. But especially new construction, you could see in the listing histories during COVID how, I mean, I know for me, when I looked at them, you'd see every 2 weeks, they would increase $2,000, the price in the listing history. It would go up and up and up. And now you see either just the opposite, or you see more of a mix. But pendings, listings, listing histories, changing markets, what comes to mind for you? What's your go-to to look at?
Pendings are very important, and it does tell a tale about just what's going on in the market. And one thing that I didn't add that could be very crucial in an appraiser packet is if you've got a property that had 10 multiple offers. That's pretty important for us as appraisers to know. We're not asking what the multiple offers were, and we're not asking to see those sales contracts on all those offers. We're just asking for the number of contracts, the number of multiple offers that you've had, because that helps us to say, okay, this property was very hot, and that's why maybe we need to investigate. Maybe we need to look at the SAM more and see exactly what's going on in that market. And it is very market specific. Just if something's going on in my market, it might not be going on in the market you serve. So it is very important to be confident in the market that you're in, and just make sure that you're keeping up with those trends and looking at that data once again.
Okay. Okay, so we're nearing kind of the ending part of this, but I want to go into one, but I want you all to think about one thing maybe that you want the audience to know, maybe one situation you've run into or something that you sticking point for that you just want to communicate to the audience today. But before we do that, let's talk about, we get a lot of questions about appraising something for a conventional loan versus an FHA or VA. Now, I don't do VA, but I know FHA is somewhat similar. So, William, what what are the differences generally between when you appraise? Are there different values, or are there just different requirements? Or what's your approach?
Okay, so I'll start off by saying for me is the values are pretty much the same. It's just in a different approach. And it's a different inspection. It's a different report because the inspection is different. So with conventional, your inspection is more about finding out the features and measurements and things like that. And as far as the deepest the inspection may go for me is where there's something that's not safe, or there's not like a finished area or like a finished flooring or finished wall or things of that nature, which you may be able to comment during the report, doing the report, and you can still leave it as is. FHA, on the other hand, is all about the inspection, the safety issues, deterioration, and things of that nature. So where there's things that may be wrong with the property, it goes a little bit deeper when it comes to painting, when it comes to repairs and things of that nature. Your roof, how many years does this have left? The flooring, whether it's continuous and things of that nature. You don't have anything that's cracked in the flooring, anything that's unsafe, or anything that's unfinished. FHA comes into play there. And when it does, we have to write those things up and make the report subject to repairs. On the other hand, with conventional, most of the time you don't have to do that. You can make a comment on and just let the lender know what's going on exactly with the property. And other than something that's real unsafe, the property is going to be as is unless the lender comes back and asks you to make it subject to, because of what kind of loan it is or whoever the lender is, what their requirements are.
So, Dave, there are there things that just will not pass? Like, what do you do if you see a foundation issue or even a locational issue with fall zones with electrical towers? I think there used to be a category for FHA where if you were in a close to a landing zone, what was that called?
A runway clear zone.
A runway clear zone.
And that's only for new construction now. They remove that, except for new construction.
So what are you doing as an appraiser? You're actually, you have to talk to the client when you run into these things, and because it's really kind of a lender decision too, because they have to package it right for HUD or whoever, right?
Sure.
Or their investor in the convention.
See, some of these items are curable, but some of the ones you mentioned are not curable. So
talk about define curable and incurable.
Well, there's different types of obsolescence, which are issues typically with functionality or externalities. So if you live next to a landfill, that's obviously an incurable external obsolescence, because you can't close down the landfill and move all the trash to a different location. You can sometimes cure a physical issue, like if you're doing the appraisal and the roof appears to be have less than 2 years of physical remaining economic life, you can stipulate that report on having a new roof put on the house. So obviously that's curable. So FHA did have a huge laundry list of things that were required in order for them to pass minimal property standards. To some degree, they have waived a lot of the stuff now. They're mostly interested in issues that are safety related to the soundness of the property, and related to the marketability of the property. So, for instance, worn out carpeting and vinyl floors, those are considered to be cosmetic items per FHA. As long as there's not a board coming loose from the laminate floors that creates a trip hazard. At that point, then you do have a safety issue. So a lot of this is now a judgment call of the appraiser as to what considered issues of soundness, marketability, and safety. There used to be requirements for handrails on steps and stuff. No longer the case. It's up to us to determine whether or not we think it's safe or not. If there's a certain distance. There are requirements for pickets and handrails on porches and decks. So I will list FHA's most recent handbook over in the webinar chat. I'm sure one of the Courtney will put it up for you. It's a great reading if you're if you're dying to go to sleep and you can't get there. But the takeaway here is that if there's an issue that looks like it's going to involve safety, soundness, or marketability, we will address it somewhere in the report. If it's incurable, we'll make adjustments for it. If it's curable, we'll most likely ask for those to be remediated. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's a lot. So Holly, both William and Dave covered a lot. I think one of the things that came to mind is going back to kind of adjustments too. And if you want to add on to the FHA versus conventional, which you do differently, but also we get a lot of questions. Hey, do new windows, we put new windows or we put a new roof, maintenance items versus maybe additions and value, there's a difference there. Maybe you can explain for everybody so what's your take? You know what I'm getting at. I can tell.
Well, I do just want to expand on the FHA and VA, that VA and FHA are similar in the fact that soundness, security, safety, those are all top issues for them. And one of the biggest items I feel like we see is chipping and peeling paint. And chipping and peeling paint is just something that has to be repaired. In often cases with VA, the underwriter can waive those things, but it's very rare that they do that. And it's just better to have those things fixed if your client is going that route. And then back to the adjustment question that you asked, it's still market derived. And if the market shows that windows is a thing that provides an adjustment and supports an adjustment, then that's something that we would adjust for. However, I will say we do as appraisers look at the overall quality and overall condition of the house. So yes.
And that's what I was kind of getting to. It might not necessarily add value, a line item value adjustment for new windows, but what it does is it keeps the general condition of the property up to standard to what everything else is in the market, where you wouldn't be making a requirement or a negative maybe view of the condition of the property. So that's kind of where I was going with the let's talk about, there's been a lot of questions in the chat. I don't know, where else do we want to go with this? So there was a question about, do you praise things differently in North and South Carolina, North Carolina versus South Carolina? I think that's a pretty easy one, right? It's the same. Go ahead, William.
The appraisal process is the same no matter where we're appraising. It's just the data that we're looking at. But William might expand on that.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, location. No matter where you go, it's about the location that you're in. So you appraise it pretty much the same way, and then you report it pretty much the same way. You just got to change your license number and stuff like that on the report, and that's it. So
You're required to be licensed in whatever state you're doing the appraisal in. Not only that, you're required to have geographic competence to do a report in whatever area, even if it's in the same state that you currently work in. I couldn't go to Raleigh and do an appraisal. There's no way. Well, I could if I declared myself, getting geographically competent, but the point is you need to know your market. You need to understand your market. It doesn't do anybody any good for an appraiser to go outside of a market into an area they're totally unfamiliar with, doing a report. And not only that, it's against use tax requirements.
Yeah, and so your approach to value, no matter where, like even when we're talking FHA and conventional, the value approach is the same. We aren't going to pick different comparables. It's all going to be the same approach. We might supply a little bit more information in different types of, in a different fashion, or be more detailed in certain areas, but the approach to value is the same. And the last thing, any of you guys, as far as I go, any of you guys want to bring up something or a point that you want to make? I just quickly go around. Dave, is there something that popped up or comes to mind that you just want to communicate to the audience?
Well, William did a pretty good job of talking about basements, because basements seem to be the main point of contention between brokers and appraisers. There's just the understanding between the two is totally different, I think, between the groups of people. So I was told a long time ago, Fannie Mae said that if the soles of your shoes were below ground level on any part of that level, then the entire level was to be considered below grade and therefore basement. So, I'll get calls all the time. This house, you say it's 1,300 square feet. This is 2,600 square foot home. Yeah, okay. But if you look on page 2, we've segregated the above grade from the basement. And you'll see if you add those two numbers together, that's going to come up to the square footage you believe this house to be. Well, this house isn't a basement, but it is. So, if we say we most of us have been doing this long enough to know if this house has a basement, we say it has a basement, it generally is a basement. Because that'd be really bad on our part to miss. Go ahead. Somebody say something?
No.
But that's it. I mean, that's the whole thing. So not only is that heated square footage basement, but all the rooms contained in that are also basement, which are also shown on a different line and are not reflected on the above grade square footage. So it's very confusing, especially in markets, maybe like Holly's market, where may not be a whole lot of differentiation between above and below grade, because the qualities are commensurate with each other.
Okay. All right. And we don't have that much time left, but William, did you have anything you wanted to express?
Yes, I'll be quick. I just want to say that I try to value all agents and their opinions and what they have to give me. So being informative about what we're appraising or what you can give us is very imperative for us to come up with the opinion of value. So any information that you can give us, I mean, I can go as far as if there's something that was paid for that you did, if there are invoices that you can show me or anything like that can help me justify what I'm doing as far as appraising this property would be very helpful. So I'm just all inclusive on agents giving me as much information as possible. And so, as long as you're not, coercing me or anything like that, I'm good with it. But don't be afraid to give me as much information as possible, because it does really help.
Thanks, William. Holly, anything you want to add?
Sure, I would love to add, just remember that data is huge, and the more consistent we can be with data and the more accurate we can be with data, just helps us all be better agents and appraisers and everything.
Back to Dave.
One more thing,
Thanks,
Pete.
Holly.
Sorry to interrupt. One more thing. It's important that we know what the concessions are, seller concessions on a sale. And there's a place to put the dollar amount. But if the seller concessions include a 2008 snowmobile, or a cabin cruiser that don't fit on a money line, you need to please put that in the remarks for us, because it would actually, it could in some cases help your cause. So
Part
you
of, part,
need to know all that data.
part of why we get the sales contract, we're required to analyze any contracts or agreements on the subject property that we're appraising, because I know that was a question too. I'm going to hand it over to Lee. Lee,
No, listen, I'm taking all these notes and I'm like, okay, I got Dave's number, I got Holly's number. Because as a practitioner, you guys really addressed it. I think William even said that once or twice, is that the problem is, I'm selling something on a golf course and the downstairs walks out to this gorgeous view of the ninth turn, right? Or it's whatever. And you're like, yeah, but what I'm hearing is I have to find a comp that also has another property with a basement finished like it and everything. They have to be comps. They have to be comparable. It's hard to compare the apples to the oranges. You need to find a whole big parcel of oranges. That's what I'm hearing. But what are the other things? And I'd love for you guys to maybe speak on that just really quick. I can't remember which one you just said that. It's imperative for agents to put all the data they can into the MLS, because you're using that and then beginning to compare that. So it's incredibly important for us to do the right job by getting that data there.
well, and that goes, I'll tell you, shooting yourself in the foot, and builders do it, or used to do it more, where they don't put all their activity in their developments, and then you go in, you appraise it, and then they're like, well, what about these 3 sales? Well, you didn't put them in the MLS. So it's awareness.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's great. The one question that I saw, and there were a bunch of things posted in the chat, and I know you guys could speak to. There are several great things that were dropped into the webinar chat, but the sources of information, whether you have information from National Association of Realtors, from North Carolina Realtors, from Canopy. Information is the key. Knowing what you can do, right? How to enter that data, how to advise your clients. Can someone, will you guys maybe speak to the benefit of maybe a pre-listing appraisal?
William, go ahead, or Holly.
Yeah, so I do those. Pre-listing appraisals are they're used for a few things. So sometimes the actual seller is they heard, well, they're not in the same agreement with the actual agent. So therefore I come in and I give them what it is, or what my value is. And then there are times where there hasn't been any activity in the area, and the agent would just like to know what the property would appraise for. So there are a lot of advantages of getting a pre-listing appraisal, especially in a market where there's no data or there's no inventory, and there hasn't been any in a long time. So that's it's a lot of help for the market. That way, when you go into the market, you know what the value will probably come in at, and that way you can sell it in a reasonable, and your exposure time will be matching with everybody else instead of having to wait so long.
And there's a couple of things doing that. One, the appraiser is going to need to know the purpose of the appraisal, because they can be done for divorces, they can be done for pre-purchase listing, so where it's not for a mortgage, and we all can do that. And then the other thing is who the client is. So it could be, if Lee, if you were ordering an appraisal from me, I'm going to be, are you the client? Are you my client? Or is the homeowner my client? Doesn't matter who pays me. I need to, because if you're the client, then I'm going to be talking to you. I'm not going to be giving a copy of the appraisal to anybody else. You can do what you want with it. But if it's a homeowner, then I'm going to be talking with the homeowner. I'm not going to be giving you a copy of the appraisal. The homeowner can give you a copy of the appraisal. So those are two very important things when you engage an appraiser, is the purpose and who the client is.
Wow, I saw literally all 4 of you guys were like, yes, this is true. And I think that's important, just like we do now. Who is our fiduciary? Who is our client? Who are we taking care of? And one thing I heard, and I wrote it, that literally it's in bold across the top, was that where you may not be advocates to the property, you're also not antagonists, right? You're just looking at this and saying, this is what the data supports. This is just what the data supports. And the problem is we have clients who are emotional, and let's be honest, guilty as charged. Sometimes I can be a little emotional, and I think, yes, it's my little thing. I need to get it across the goal line. And so we appreciate you. Can you guys speak to the importance of having an appraiser or 2 or 3? And I know I have those appraisers in my phone that I can call and have that quick conversation. Can you guys just really quickly, as we make the turn, speak to that really quickly?
I get calls all the time, and I've been in leadership for many years. I've been recycled a few times at my local board. So, I'm pretty well known here, and people know that if they have a question, they can call me. So, and I've never dissuaded people from doing that. I can take calls while I'm driving down the road. If I can't take a call now, I'll call you back later. But we are a wealth of information sometimes. We give the best advice we can. Sometimes we give advice you don't want to hear, but we generally give advice that you need to hear.
Great. Holly or William, anyone want to add to that?
I'm very open to having agents call me. I have them in my phone also. I also have appraisers in my phone, because at the end of the day, we want to get it right. So if there's an appraiser that can help me do that, or if there's an agent that can help me give me some information where I can do that, then that's my end goal.
All right, Holly, last word.
I'll just also add that we're in this together, and just because it doesn't seem like we're on the same team, we're all there to help the client overall get their house. So just make sure that we're willing to talk to you, just like they said, and hopefully you're willing to talk to us.
Wow. Well, you guys heard it right there. Thank you to our panelists, William, Dave, Holly, Peter, for your valuable time this morning. Again, folks that are attending this presentation will be recorded. So if you missed any parts of it or whatever, you want to go back and get all that information following this event, you will have the opportunity to complete a survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback, as it's critically important. And on behalf of Canopy Realtor Association, thank you for attending. Thank you for continuing to advance our profession and improve our communities, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again. See you soon, guys.